My name is Chu. I'm the co-founder and CMO of Perkbox. For those of you that don't know Perkbox, we're an HR platform, a technology platform. We help businesses engage with their staff. We've been growing really, really rapidly. We started off with perks and benefits, but we've diversified beyond that now. So we have reward recognition, which is a way to incentivize and motivate staff online using virtual means and technology. We also have insights, which is a way to really track and engage with your staff and really measure their sentiments. So in a way, we're trying to really improve workplace culture and engagement using technology and creating a brand that is very customer and user centric.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. So as Chu mentioned, the topic is how technology is impacting employer-employee relations. That's why we're all here. Many would argue that digital transformation is driving, or at least it should be, a significant increase in workplace productivity. It's supposed to free us of time so that we have a more with less approach emerging in our offices. Whether that's the case or not, we're here to explore. But we're so focused on assessing productivity and the threats of new technology that we rarely stop to think about how it's actually affecting the dynamics between the employer and the employee. What are the main use cases then for this digital workplace?
So I think when you talk about the digital workplace and what are the use cases for it, it's very easy to fall into a problem where you've just got a technology looking for a solution, which is that kind of classic mistake that lots of very tech entrepreneurs fall into. They invent this amazing thing and then they don't have any customers for it because they're not really solving a problem. And I think that if we're too quick to try and apply, to look for use cases for technology, rather than find the problems and then go and find the technology that fixes it, then we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. Yeah. So having said that, as my caveat, there are still some very obvious use cases to me, and I think that a lot of it is around, well, what are you trying to help people to get done? And if you've got problems like they're not communicating enough, so they're not talking to enough people, then you can use technology to help that, because maybe you can make it easier for them to catch up on discussions that previously happened, which is a great use case for Slack, for example.
Does it sometimes work as a hindrance in terms of people who have stopped actually physically talking to each other and they'll spend a while drafting emails or, instead of actually just going up to someone's desk
I feel like we've probably had that problem since the beginning of email, right?
Yeah. Why is the digital workplace so important then for the employee experience? So we know what it is, but how is it helping them?
I think there's a couple of things, and I'm just, certainly what our customers are telling us is one of the big drains on employees is this idea of what we here call context switching. Like I'm doing something, then I have to go someplace else to do something else. Then I have to go log into something else to do something else. And that in of itself becomes a drain because you don't have a unified picture of what you're doing. You're having to go to all these different places and they're not always connected. And I think that is definitely one aspect. Email management, right? It's got smarter and better over the years. That's another productivity drain. And of course, meetings, because if you really want to drive down productivity, let's just look at anyone's calendar. It's full of meetings. So those seem to be the themes that we're definitely hearing that people want to try and solve.
Okay. And how does this transform the culture of the workplace? Like, how is it impacting the culture?
I'm a really big believer that actually technology actually predominantly reflects the culture that's already there. So if you work in a culture that is largely opaque, it's very secretive, it will just get reflected in the culture. What really needs to happen, and you touched on this a little bit, for the approach to actually using technology needs to change, I think. And that's actually kind of what my team does. That's what a lot of our customers are looking at, saying, how do we help people through the change? Part of that is leadership, part of that is driving awareness, that is leadership participation. I'm going to be more open and transparent using this technology. I'm going to demonstrate the behavior I would like to see. Yeah. I think when you combine that with the right technology, then it's very, very powerful, because the effect it can have on the employee is just to flatten the workspace. And that's certainly what, flattening the distance between the board and the coalface is potentially very powerful.
But at the same time, you've got to define that culture in advance, I think.
Correct, yeah.
You know, otherwise you might have a very extended hierarchy that just makes itself into
exactly.
a
It
digital
would
form.
just get reflected in the technology.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that technology is enabling is data kind of at all levels. And I think to an extent this is inverting the pyramid a little bit. So typically in a really hierarchical business where the information was only visible to the top levels, a lot of that data now is visible to the whole hierarchy. And it's a lot of the guys that are actually getting their hands dirty, looking at that data, that understand the business better than anyone else. And they are now very well informed, and they know they're close to the customer and they understand the data. So it's quite a powerful mix.
I think that's a really key point. It just reminds me, I had a meeting with a customer about a week ago. They now pump every CSAT they get from their customers into a Slack channel. The whole company can see if they got a good CSAT or a bad one. And if there was a bad one, they can have a discussion around it. Sorry, it's customer sat score, right? So that's really powerful. That's a simple piece of data. But if you're trying to orient a culture around being responsive to customers and thinking about customers, it's simple but powerful. Yeah.
Available to all, and it flattens the structure. Would you agree with that, Natalie?
Yeah, I would. And likewise, you know, when it is a good comment that comes in as well, then the whole team can celebrate that and say, yeah, we've done a really good job. So that helps build the morale as well and help bond the whole company together.
Same with the bad one though, because it usually starts the conversation.
Yeah.
Somebody's very unhappy, so it's like, okay, well, why are they unhappy, and who are the people that can fix this? And if everybody sees that, then they can sort of self-select very efficiently. You don't have to kind of go through a protracted process of discovering who are the right people to talk to.
And this is what I mean, where it kind of flattens that hierarchy and inverts that pyramid.
Yeah.
Because normally, when more hierarchical businesses without using technology, those CSAT scores would probably go to an analyst. The analysed results would go up to the general manager, and then it would feed down eventually to the person that actually needs to action something in that feedback. But through technology, we're dispersing that information to everybody, getting it into the hands of people that need it quickest, and they're able to hear the customer voice, which is key.
So what kind of tools are out there?
Well, there are of course collaboration tools, and actually there is actually quite a large overlap between collaboration and employee engagement. So people need to feel rewarded and recognised, and as part of recognition, people need to be. It needs to be every day, all day, and things like Slack are very, very good for that. With reactions, of course.
Yeah, well, we have a thing called Kudos Bot, right? So you want to thank someone anywhere in the company, you just talk to Kudos Bot and say, hey, I want to thank Dave and the team for doing such a brilliant job, and that goes to everybody. And I think that kind of thing really helps stimulate engagement.
So technology in the workplace, how is it affecting the physical and mental well-being of employees?
I think there's of course good and bad things. I think technology is really ramping up the speed that businesses can change, and as part of that, I think that can generate a really exciting environment to be in. But it's also can be quite an unstable environment, and people with skills might overnight find that those skills are kind of obsolete. Some whole industries might be disrupted and become obsolete pretty quickly. Yeah. So it's not the safest environment, but it's pretty exciting. It's pretty challenging, and I think the distraction of technology can't be kind of overstated. So technology, communication is incredibly important. It does run the whole business, of course. But I pulled, just about an hour ago, I pulled some stats from Slack, and we did 83,000 messages in the last 30 days in just my team alone. And
including bots or just people?
I think it includes bots.
Yeah, okay.
Including bots.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of communication, and I'd love to know how much of that communication was kind of productive, well-timed communication, and how much was potentially catching people in the middle of their focus and maybe pulling them out of focus.
Yeah, you do have to set those boundaries there, and set the expectations among the staff as well of what the channels are specifically used for. So expect, this one's for immediate response, this one is for later on, so don't feel pressured that you've got to answer this one straight away. And when you've got the more flexible working patterns as well, so say if you're a carer or something like that from home, you might be fitting the hours that you work around when you can. So you could be doing stuff that's outside of hours, but then you've got to be mindful that when you are using these channels, that you're not then putting pressure, sometimes, you know, unknowingly, just putting pressure on your peers, thinking that they've got to answer you then, but it might be you can't actually get the work done till 10 o'clock at night when your kids are gone to sleep or something like that. So it's just about getting that balance struck and making sure that everybody is comfortable with what's expected when with the tech that they're using.
Yeah, and having a bit more empathy, I think,
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, that's a really
Just being mindful.
Yeah.
Do you think employers are actually shifting their mindset to that way of thinking, or do you think they're still being quite demanding and have this expectation now that there is this technology available and you can WhatsApp someone, call some, like there is sometimes, unless you actually smash your phone, stamp on it, there is always a way. But yeah, there's that option too.
Yeah.
I have
There are always going to be bad bosses. Right?
Yeah.
Pardon?
There are always going to be bad bosses.
Yeah, there are.
Sorry, I just interrupted.
Yeah, go for it.
I actually wrote a story on this on Forbes a while ago about corporate email addiction, and there was some really interesting research from British Summer Fruits earlier this year. I don't know if you've ever seen research, but if you Google British Summer Fruits email, it'll probably come up. And there were some stats in there that were really, really frightening, and there were things like 61% of people check their emails between 11 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. Like 21% of people have been contacted by their boss while on holiday. 47% of people their dinner with their children regularly interrupt by their boss, and things like that. And that actually shows that, in fact, bad bosses are not actually in the are not in the minority. They're actually in the majority, in fact. And in my article, I kind of said, I think we're heading for like mental health breakdown in the end, because, essentially because of technology, it's allowing us to think it's kind of okay to invade into people's personal times. I mean, I'm self-employed, so I have the extra pressure of clients really think that although they wouldn't ever bother one of their colleagues on holiday, they'll bother me, and they'll send me emails going, I know you're on holiday, but... And I'm like, yeah, I'm on holiday, I'm trying to get away from you just for 1 week, okay. And so I kind of, for me, I just... sometimes I wonder one day we can have software packages that have little stickers on, like cigarettes packages, going, warning, this is really bad for your health. And we're only, one of the weird things is we're only in the beginning of seeing this. I mean, I have children, and one of the things I think to myself is one day they're going to get to 18 and they're going to go to me, Mum, I want you to take down that picture on Facebook of me in a bath when I was 1. And, and things like that. We haven't even crossed all those barriers. I mean, my daughter's 9. We just gave her a smartphone 9 years ago. I didn't even have a smartphone. Yeah. And that's kind of like, the sorts of things, certainly as a parent, I feel like we're overcoming really, really quickly. And I don't think we're only at the beginning, really. Sorry, I've jumped in to speak as well. But I think we're really only at the beginning of actually understanding the impact of this technology on our mental and physical health. That's my view. And technology is a marvellous, great thing, and it certainly helps our productivity. But we're only just beginning to understand the effects on us as human beings of having things that beep on us constantly. And I think there'll be a lot of work and research done in the next few years. And those stats from British Summer Fruits are worth seeing because they're quite frightening.
I think there's quite a few people who wanted to know where technology is going in terms of the workplace and what the vision is for the future of the workplace. I recently saw a YouTube clip of HoloLens where you can have AR meetings basically, so we're just all holograms sitting around the table. I mean, is that where things are going? Yeah. Jonathan, any thoughts on where technology is going?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think for me, the technology in work, I guess, is governed by two things, and one of those things is sort of the history of technology itself, which really comes down to you're either making something to help somebody do more with the same amount of time or less time, or you're reducing waste, really. And those two things are really very abstract, but actually are extremely powerful because they're also big things that contribute to the growth of the economy. And that's the second thing, which is that the growth of the economy really is all about productivity. And productivity increases come from companies. And the recent history of productivity is really shocking. It's like really minimal 1-2% productivity increases year on year, when in the second half of the 20th century it was much, much, much bigger. And you go, well, surely the internet and like Slack's made everybody so much more productive. So what's going on, guys? And I really think there's a disconnect between the way that productivity is being measured, which is probably to do with GDP, which has long been said to be an inaccurate measurement of what's actually kind of good about the world, and what's actually happening with people, which is people do feel more productive. They do feel like they're getting more done. I mean, maybe they feel more stressed and they feel worked harder than ever, but it is true that, you can start a business with a laptop and not a server farm like it took 10, 15 years ago. And that is a massive, massive shift, and costs of things have come down massively. And I think that's what's going to keep going. So the big thrust for me in terms of how do you keep getting people to do more with less is really around automation and streamlining the interactions between people in those teams of teams. So rather than a kind of an inefficient loop where you go, Ben, can you do something for me? And Ben goes, I don't know, I need to talk to Ra. And Ra goes, I talk to, Sajni. And then you come back to me and you're like, can you help me with this thing? I'm like, wait, that's familiar. That little loop is really, really inefficient. And if I could just introduce maybe a little, sprinkling of kind of big data or something into my computer Nexus or whatever, that's just able to know that when I want to achieve goal A, that, actually it's Sally is the best person to go to. And so that then solves like a huge amount of problems for me. And then you sort of spin that up, sort of take that to its logical conclusion, and really you've got this whole idea of smart agents and the enterprise technology really working on behalf of all of its users, I suppose, all of its employees, to do really great stuff, just using like the max capacity of their creativity instead of being slaves to corporate bureaucracy. And that's like a massive shift. And I think that the technologies that we see coming into the workplace, whenever they contribute towards that, people are going to go, oh yeah, this feels really good. I don't know why this feels really good, but it's because it's helping you do more and be more like capable as an employee going towards that goal that you're trying to meet.
I'm a huge advocate that the future of technology and working is working from home, and literally as close to the Jetsons as possible, where the guy's working at home and whenever his boss calls him and yells at him, it just kind of pops up on the screen. And he only worked for a few hours a day and he was very effective. And I'm an advocate of that because the last 4 years, everyone in my team of 6 has always worked from home, and we're using things like Slack and we're using Skype and we're using all those kind of sharing tools to the point that it will become the norm. Yeah. That everyone will be kind of working from home to reduce traffic and commuting and costs, or they'll be working in co-working spaces very near their homes, because literally now every suburb is getting its own co-working space. So this is, if it's not from home, then it's somewhere, but just not in a centralised office. And then that will become so normal that companies will need to then try up it again, which might mean having more engagement opportunities, understanding when their most effective times are, and saying actually you're most effective during 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's when you can work, and trying to literally maybe use an algorithm to actually pinpoint the most effective.
Does that get Big Brother-ish though, when they're like clocking in to see how effective and efficient you are at whatever time of the day? Or
well, no, it's an interesting one. I would just say I think there is another lens to look at it, which is I think the way work's going to evolve is your tools are going to start to become invisible. And by that, what I mean is you're just going to go to one place. Like we view Slack, for example, as a collaboration hub. It's not just a chat tool. You guys were talking about notifications and other things. All this stuff's going to come at you that you need, that you'll be able to filter, and the AI will sort out what's most important. But you are not going to know or care where it comes from. It's just the stuff you need to do your work. I don't need to know it's Salesforce. I don't need to know it's Zoom. It's just going to be there. And I think the trend that we certainly seeing, or from our customers, is like I read a report, something I think it was by McKinsey possibly. I may be wrong. That the average organisation has over 1,000 apps, right? So if you can imagine an IBM-sized company, IBM's our biggest customer, an IBM-sized company. Imagine what that's like. 400,000 people. If you can make that invisible, remove that complexity from everything, you're not only going to be more engaged in your work, you're going to be more productive.
Yeah, well, they're always looking at ways to help the employers to upskill. So they're looking at continuous learning programs now, so that employers can buy into programs to upskill their staff, and then actually let the staff pick the topics that interest them, that they want to learn as well, so that they've got that interest and that desire to learn. And by doing that and centralising this information, then that gives the employers a lot of information on what skills have they got amongst their teams as well. because otherwise it's very difficult to get hold of that information, and it's quite time consuming to go through at the moment to try and gather that data on what skills people have got, what courses are they doing, things like that. This centralises all of that information so that it then becomes very powerful for the employers that they know what skills are there, and also because they're allowing staff to choose what they want, then they can see with the new technologies what interests they've got and maybe know what direction to move in next with what they're doing.
Great. Big round of applause. Thank you very much to our panel speakers.
Oh,